Here doesn't know who I am or what I do. Who doesn't know? Okay, all right. The People's Lawyer, used to be a solicitor a long time ago. I was on tour in 2019, or I was about to go on tour, doing the tour for the book School No Place for Children, and planning a national tour, because I'd given a keynote speech at something called the Glastonbury Symposium, and that went well. So I was planning a tour in 2020 based on the book, and then, well, we know what happens next, don't we? And people said to me, David, you need to broaden your remit. It's no good just talking about schools. Everyone's locked down at home, and they want to know what their rights are. They want to know what's going on. So I'd already done lots of research, re-taught myself law, and started doing lawful rights talks in the north, which is where I'm from. And eventually, towards the end of 2020, I became the People's Lawyer by accident, really, when I was on a promenade at Morecambe in Lancashire, and I was introducing myself to the crowd, and I said, some of you may know me, some of you may not. And so it was similar to this. Half of them knew me and half of them didn't. And I said, I noticed there was police knocking around, and I'd had 2 attempts to arrest me doing a talk, and none had been successful. So I thought, oh, well, we're not going to give them a free hit with my name. So it just came to me, I'm not David or David Adelman, I'm the People's Lawyer. So I didn't say my name, I just gave them something to remember me by, something that the police couldn't grab hold of, because that's a fictitious, entity. It didn't really exist. But anyway, it went on to exist. The talks I was giving went broader, got a website, and the course I was already teaching, based on the law that I'd taught myself, freedom law and true law, natural law. Some people call it common law, but it's not common law. Common law is not natural law. It's based on natural law, but it's not natural law. And it can get you into a lot of trouble. A lot of people misunderstand what common law is. I'm not here to talk about common law. I'm here to talk about what's been done to us in our schooling, how we can turn it around and what it means, and how we need to protect the generations coming through. So, the evil of schooling. I was educated once, it took me years to get over it. And some of us are still working through what has been done to us, because most of our thoughts and most of our actions are carried out unconsciously, which means that what we're doing is what we are programmed to do. What we are thinking is what we are programmed to think. And that programming comes essentially from parent schooling television. But because we spend so long in school at such a vulnerable age, I would argue that it's mainly schooling. Television just kicks you while you're down. Is anyone in school tomorrow? Well, what's tomorrow? Saturday, Monday. Anyone in school Monday? Anyone in school? Well, I would suggest respectfully that you all are, but you're not conscious of it. What do I mean by that? Well, remember at school, if you wanted to be safe, you needed to be busy. And that's the same in an office, isn't it? If you relent, if you slack, you're no longer safe, you've got somebody breathing down your neck. Or even worse, something breathing down your neck. Artificial intelligence, a program, a piece of software that's keeping tabs on you. In school there was risk aversion, there are risk averse environments, whereas at office it's health and safety insanity, isn't it? At school you had a timetable, and now you need a diary to survive in the jungle that we call the matrix system. You try turning up unannounced at someone who is a typical everyday man or woman, and they'll go apeshit. They won't be able to cope. What are you doing here? You're not booked in. Yeah, but I'm your mate. Well, so what? You're not. So it's the spontaneity's gone out of life, hasn't it? And that spontaneity is crushed in the classroom. Grades. All this fake reward for real things. You give them real time and real energy and real effort. In return you get grades. Well, that's fake. In the grown-up world, you get money, which is equally fake. If you want to know more about things that I just touch on, then go on my website and watch the videos, or do my course. But I'll flag all those up right at the end. At school, it was 9 to 4 sometimes, and now it's more like 8 till 6 now. Office 9 till 5, again more like 8 till 7, because they're grooming you. They're grooming you to be unavailable to self and others for most of the key parts of the day. At school, you had a teacher. At work, you've got a boss. Well, what's the difference between a boss and a teacher? Most teachers revel in their self-assumed power. Discipline, you had, if you stray from the rules, you'll be carpeted, whether it's at school or in the office. And at school, you had classmates. At work, you've got colleagues, but they're not your friends. They are actual rivals and potential enemies. They will grass you up to further their own, to further their own career in the office, or to further their own purposes at school. Because everyone wants to be in the authority's good books. That's how we're brought up to think. Homework is something you got at school, and as we'll see later, it's a degradation of your life. It detracts from the quality of your life, as does overtime. Because when you're doing homework or overtime, interchangeable, you are not available to self and others. This is just, you could be having a life. That's what I'm trying to say. By bringing out into the public domain how human institutions actually behave, we can understand, frankly, to a degree, for the first time, the civilization that we actually have. So we're just uncovering, we're opening Pandora's box, we're halting all our assumptions, we're stopping in our thoughts. Hang on a minute, what are we doing and why are we doing it? This is why I'm here, to have a look at what we're doing and why we're doing it. Question 1, is schooling compulsory? Do you really have to send your boys and girls to school? They've never made schooling compulsory. 1944 Education Act, which was renewed in the 1996 Education Act. Schooling is not compulsory. So legally, for now, we have the choice. Now, they may change that, and they may make it, like in Germany, illegal to homeschool. But for now, you have a choice, a completely free choice. You may have a local authority breathing down your neck, but you can just keep the door shut and just return everything to sender and put a private by appointment only notice on the door. All these tips, tricks, and hacks are covered in my other videos. I'm not here to go into detail about that. What does government schooling actually mean? Break down that phrase, government schooling. What does it mean? What does that phrase mean? What does governments mean?
Mind control.
Mind control, yes. And schooling?
Indoctrination.
Yeah, basically getting a group of beings, like fish, groups of fish that end up moving at the same time and in effect thinking the same thoughts at the same time. So what they want is a group of fish-like beings that don't have individuated, creative, spontaneous momentum or action or thought. That's the whole point. Using mind control, indoctrination, because the school is an agent of the government, therefore it's an agent of government mind control. Who is home educating, or who's been involved? Who has been home educated? Who's involved in it? No one. Kind of, yeah. Right. Well, home education will save humanity. I can tell you that for nothing. If you went to school, did you thrive or merely survive? So, how would you thrive in an environment like that? I'd defy anyone to thrive. What about that? Is that a school or is it a prison? You wouldn't know. These days you wouldn't know. Schools and prisons are built by the same companies. They have the same infrastructure. They have the same fencing, the same surveillance cameras, the same fobs, the same receptionists and guardians and wardens and security. And these are little kids. So that little boy or girl is thinking, well, they've put me in prison. They don't think of this consciously because they're all in prison. They put me in prison, but I haven't done anything wrong. So what's that? Is that a school or an office or a prison? You wouldn't know. That was from 1960s communist Soviet Union, or Romania, I think it was. But although they look more attractive these days, it's still the same. You wouldn't know whether it was a prison, an office, or a school from a cursory glance. So have we been enslaved, or are we claiming sovereignty? If we're claiming sovereignty, is that claim justified? Well, let's have a look. Let's do a quiz. First of all, let's look at the definition. There's two essential definitions of slave. A slave is either a person who is a legal property of another and forced to obey them. In 2023, certainly in the West, we don't really have many of those. I know that there are human traffickers, and you could argue that the people trafficked are slaves, but even then they could walk away at any time. But they are mentally, so we're looking more at mental enslavement. A person excessively dependent is the second definition, on or controlled by something. So that's more of the modern idea of slavery, the program that we're all running, because we're all controlled by something or someone or an idea. So let's take our little quiz. So you're going to have to do some mental arithmetic. And if you can't do mental arithmetic, then you went to school for too long, is what I would say. So give yourself 100 points to start with. So these are 100 empowerment points. So your starting allowance is 100, right? And deduct 10 for each of these. So there's 3 parts to this quiz. If you went to school, deduct 10, so you're already down to 90. If you use a doctor or take pharmaceuticals, you're down to 80. If you are registered to vote, you're down to 70. If you're currently married or sharing a bed, you're down to 60. And people, if you want to ask me about sharing a bed, I'll answer that later. If you're paying taxes, bills or fines, then you're down to 50. If all of those apply to you, then your life has been normalised, but you're not a sovereign. So most of you are probably down to 50. There's 5 more. Deduct 10 points. If you're addicted or obsessively compulsive about something, and most people are. If you're currently employed or on government credits, so we're deducting another 10. If you're currently paying mortgage or a rent, deduct another 10. If you're dependent on a high street bank account, deduct another 10. If your car is registered in your government legal name to DVLA. So many of you will be right down, kind of plummeted down to 0, but that's normal, normalised anyway. So let's have a look at some positive traits to see if we can crawl back up towards sovereignty. Now you add points if you speak a foreign language fluently. So now you're showing signs of resistance to the programming, because the program wants you just to speak one language, and it only wants you to speak it bad enough so that you need a computer to help you spell, put words in the right order, you need a counsellor to organise your thoughts, a lawyer to represent your morality, a doctor to tell you what's wrong with you. You know, we've been deactivated. Play a musical instrument, add another 10. Eat only organic or farmed or grow your own food, add another 10. Never or hardly ever ill, add another 10. Happy or content pretty much all the time, add another 10. So some of you will be able to add a few 10s there. Keep that running total in your head, because there's 5 more coming to add 10. Add 10 also if you practice conscious breathing or meditation, add 10. So in other words, you don't just breathe. Yeah, there are various times of the week when you slow down and breathe consciously. Slow your breath down, or whatever, whether you call it yoga, doesn't matter what you call it. Add 10 if you drink or bathe or shower in pure or at least filtered water. So that's add another 10. If you add 10 if you have no television or have it mostly off. Add 10 if you work for yourself or in a cooperative. And add 10 if you play, dance, sing or have fun regularly. So that's play, fun, dancing, singing, whatever fun. So you're laughing and, yeah, so you're getting into the child. So the child is still alive. The child in you is still alive. They tried to kill it in school, but somehow it survived. But how well did it survive? Is it just hanging on there? Or is it thriving? For most people, it's just hanging on there, which is why they need to drink alcohol, because the inner child has been suppressed, so they need alcohol to let it out a bit. And other things, not just alcohol. But, right, part 3. Add 20, this is 20 now. Add 20 if any of these apply to you. You've done shadow work or trauma release. You use mainly cash, exchange or barter. Add 20. You don't use a smartphone, or you do use a de-Googled one. So add 20. You home educate or were home educated or are involved in home education. Add 20. You do your own research into everything, so you don't just take anyone's word for it, not even mine. You have practical or survival skills. Add 20. You're not dependent on credit rating. You don't give a shit about your credit score, because if you do, you can't be sovereign. It means you're worried about what the neighbours say. So now you should have a running total, 1 score, and if you do, then let's have a look at what it means in this. It's only a fun quiz, but it'll give you an idea of where you are. If you're 250 or over, you're liberated, you're sorted, and now you can be the inspiration for other people to follow your example. If you're 170 to 240, your liberation is in progress. If you're 80 to 160, you're still a bit stuck in the matrix. And if you're lower than 80, what's up, Doc? Yeah? So you've got some serious... There were most people that come to these talks are definitely not in the bottom category. They're in the middle 2 categories. But I did have one woman at the front saying, oh shit, I'm in the bottom one. You know, I said, it's all right, you know, there's only one way to go, isn't there, from that? Yeah? The essential difference between slaves and sovereigns is that slaves need permission, because that's what you were taught at school. You need permission. That's what schooling is. It's an exercise in making people believe, and it lasts 10 to 15 years. That's why it's so hard for most grown-ups to accept the idea that they do not need permission. When I was giving a talk in full-on lockdown, I was in Macclesfield, which is arguably the most evil town in England. It's in Cheshire, and it is pure satanic evil. I didn't know that, but I found out the hard way when I was on their market day, and it was middle of lockdown, so they allowed 6 stalls, and the stall holders couldn't give out any free samples, and there was no one about because everyone was still scared shitless about some mythical. And I had stall holders coming at me saying, you're killing my business. I had passers-by saying, you're insane, you should be locked up. I had council workers saying, have you got a license to emit amplified sound? And they had the the high-vis jackets on. In other words, they were asking me, have you got our permission? And I was saying, no, I don't have a license. I'm just doing it. And they huffed and they puffed. And I said, but I'll meet you halfway, because I'm a respectful kind of guy. If you think I'm doing something illegal, then get your legal department to send my legal department an appropriate letter, and we'll be in touch. Well, that would take about a month, and he hasn't got my address anyway, and I was only going to be there another hour and a half. So that was my nice, polite way of saying, you can fuck right off. So, but they went into cognitive dissonance because they weren't used to someone just saying, do I need permission? They would say, well, you need a license. Yeah, but do I need permission? See, there's a whole, they have one world with their vocabulary, and permission translates into license. But I live in another world in which, as a sovereign, I don't need anyone's permission. I don't even have to think about it. I just do what I do, because I'm obeying the law. What law? The law that says, do no harm. That's the only law that exists in the cosmos. So, sovereigns don't need permission. This is a graphic image of a sovereign. This sovereign and the universe are one. There is no separation. But this man, woman, boy, girl, or whoever it is a slave. Because somewhere along the line they have been led to believe that the universe is out there and they are in here. And they need permission to get past those gates or bars or whatever they are. Modern man is a prisoner who thinks he is free because he refrains from touching the walls of his dungeon. So there's a lot of people out there that swear blind they're free and they're making free choices, but they're not. They're programmed to obey and comply. But they think they're obeying and complying out of a choice. No, they are programmed to obey. There's no choice. Yeah, because if they try and make a choice, the classmates, the colleagues, yeah, get back in your place. Down boy, back in your place. Let's look under the bonnet of our schooling to see what we find. In the school classroom, the one thing we won't find is life. The classroom experience is devoid of life. It's a laboratory. Children are lab rats. So the life that's missing is not just external life, it's internal life. We'll explore these in more detail over the next hour or so. And if you're devoid of life, if you're devoid of life, then you will necessarily be devoid of life experiences. Life experiences. Because to have life experiences, you need a life. But if there's no life in the classroom, how can you have life experiences? Unless I'm missing something. Because when you go to the classroom, it's the same walls you're looking at, and there's the same activities that you're doing. You may have turned the page, but it's still the same feckin' book. Yeah? We cannot learn anything of true value. When you're not having a life, and therefore not having life experiences, you cannot learn anything of true value, because you only learn value, things of true value, when you're in it, not hearing about it, which is gossip and hearsay. The school curriculum, if it was presented in a court of law, would be inadmissible as hearsay. Think about it. That means the entire school curriculum is invalid in a court of law, in a true court of law, because no one is coming with first-hand experience, with first-hand knowledge. Once a week, the teacher will give you an insight into her own life or his own life. That's first-hand knowledge. That's once a week. But most of the time, they've got to hammer the curriculum over your head. You're the nail, they've got the hammer. So, nothing of true value. When it comes down to it, the only knowledge that really matters is how to purify water, how to grow your own food, how to cook, how to build, how to love, and funnily enough, none of that is taught in school. And we could add loads to that list, like how to relate to others, how to regard life, put life in its context, what happens after life, what has happened before life. All these existential questions that are meaningful, but they're suppressed. And the reason they're suppressed is because school has become essentially 100% academic. Now, academic needs to be broken down. So we look in the Oxford English Dictionary, OED, and we find that academic translates as, quote, of no practical use or value. I'm not making any of this up. Of no practical use or value. So why were we sent to school? There you go, son. I'm sending you to school for 10, 12 years to learn nothing of any real or practical value. How do you like that? But we're not asked that, are we? No one asks us that when we're 4, 5, 6 or 7. They just shove us off in the direction of school and drop us there. So, nothing of practical use or value. So what do we learn? What did we actually learn if it wasn't of any practical use or value? It was of immense practical use and value, but not to us, to the system. So how much do you learn? Generally, well, from theory, which is what the system gives you, 2 books. From practice, how many is that? 6 books. And from your mistakes, at least twice as the rest of the others. So since they're a risk-averse academic environment, what mistakes are you being allowed to make? What meaningful life mistakes? I don't mean grammatical errors and counting problems. Those aren't mistakes. You can only learn from your mistakes. And then when you go on a course, because I do lots of courses, I've been giving them for decades, the first thing that I notice is that I'm looking at people with learning phobia. They're frightened to ask questions, and they're frightened to show that they don't know what they think you think they should. It's trial and error. Life on earth is an exercise in trial and error. But they've they've erased it from the classroom environment. How does learning actually work? Well, how do we learn anything? Before the age of 8, it's absorption, or altered state receptivity, osmosis, being like a sponge in the vernacular. That's how you learn your mother tongue. You literally just receive it. She speaks, you receive. But after the age of 7, it's a bit more complex than that, and it's mainly through repetition. That's why I encourage people to come to this talk several times, because there's so much in it, there's no way you're going to learn it all in one go. I have my own aha moments. I've heard this talk about 25 times, something like that, and I still get my own aha moments. What did we learn by repetition at school?
Times tables.
Yeah, times table. Well, I'm working on the psychology of it at the moment. We learn fear, the things that we are constantly experiencing. Fear. Fear, F5, which is fight, flight, fright, freeze, and fawn. That's how you get through. That's what you experience at school, and that's how you get through it. You go into fright, freeze, fawn. Fawn means you'll do anything to please and to lessen the fear. Or you may be a bolshy, feisty character and you fight. Yeah? But that's what we're learning at school, all those. And that F5 sets us up for a big fall later on in life when the so-called authorities tell us that we have to answer their questions, got to pay their bills, and now we're in fight, flight, fright, freeze, fawn. So we comply because we're still suffering from the trauma of our schooling. We don't want to go there again. So how much do you want? How much do you want? Yeah? What else did we learn at school? Nescience. And no one has ever heard of nescience. To be honest, I hadn't heard of it until about 6-7 years ago. What's nescience? Nescience is not knowing what you don't know. And that's what schooling does. It doesn't give you any clue as to what they haven't told you that you don't know. If you don't know what you don't know, how the fuck can you resolve that one? How can you get to know something that you don't know that you don't know? Where would you start? So it's not about not knowing, it's about not knowing that you don't know. It's not about having rights, it's about not knowing that, no, let me rephrase this. I'm going to get into a tangle if I'm not careful. Right. It's not about not knowing your rights, it's about not knowing that you don't know what your rights are. Yes? I think I got away with that one.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. See, if you don't know your rights, then you know you've got some, you just don't know which they are. But if you don't know that you don't know you've got rights, then you're just ploughing on regardless. It's beyond. Well, I'm going to come to ignorance. The greatest hell or nightmare is the one we do not realise we are in. So this is what, yeah. It's all very well to say no, my life's okay, but if you don't know that in fact you're in hell, then how are you going to get out of hell if you think your life's okay? One of the sayings that they give out is the enemy of a great life is a good life. So one of the reasons why Australia, for example, and parts of America were so easily captured by the globalists is because they have a nice life. So they've got no reason to rock the boat. And that's what the globalists have done. They've set up certain parts of the world where they have such a nice life that they don't want to rock the boat. And in other parts of the world, they don't even have a feckin' boat to rock, right? Because they're starving. Now, nescience is opposed to ignorance. Ignorance is not knowing something and not giving a shit, not caring that you don't know it. So, when you're dealing with a mainstream hypnotized victim, they don't know what you know. They don't know what you know, and they don't know that they don't know it. So you hold up the light, or Brighter Times, or whatever, or signpost them to UK Column, and you're offering them the opportunity to know that they didn't know something and to find out what it was that they didn't know. But when they turn their back, they're now showing that they don't care that they don't know. That's ignorance. So there's a willful aspect to ignorance. There is no willfulness to nescience, because you don't know what you don't know. So nescience is the innocent unknowing of the child that went to school. What else did we learn at school? Apathy. Because if you're not having a life and you're not learning anything of true value, and you're a boy or a girl, and boys or girls know that they're being scammed. They know that. They're not daft. That's why we've had riots recently in schools. But because they're trapped, it leads to, well, it would either lead to an absolute gunfight or a knife fight, and there are knife crimes. Teachers have been murdered in the north of England, or apathy, when that anger just has nowhere to go and it just goes inwards. And that's hopelessness, despair, and apathy. Because apathy is the defense mechanism for people who know they can't make a difference, or believe they can't make a difference, so they stop caring just to lessen the pain. And apathy is based in the depression that comes from suppressed anger. So depression is more like suppression. It's suppressed anger. So if you're angry, you know that you've transcended the depression. Yeah? So anger has a lot of positive aspects to it. What else did we learn at school? Guilt and shame. That's how we so easily managed. Guilt and shame. You don't want to look like the one that's letting everyone down. Shame and guilt. What else do we learn at school? Abject self-loathing. Yeah, these are huge things. These are massive, massive things. But because it's 10, 20, 30 years since we went to school, we've forgotten all about them. Nice and convenient, because society has given us so many distractions and incentives to move on and get over ourselves, that we've stopped keeping tabs on what actually happened. And we have moved on in some ways, but not in deeper ways. What else did we learn at school? Compliance keeps you safe, minimises the fuss and the stress. Stanley Milgram, in an experiment, I think it was in the 60s, found that 4 out of 5 people would press a fatal electric shock button when told to do so by the white coat. I personally believe that would be more like, so that's 8 out of 10. I think
60%.
No, 80%. I think it would be now more like 90%. What else do we learn at school? That we don't have a voice or a choice, that we don't matter. Because if we did matter, we would be attending what are called democratic schools. A democratic school is a school in which you do matter, you do have a voice, and you do have a say. Teachers and pupils have equal say. How many are there in this country? 1, 2, 3? Hardly any. There's about 50.
They actually do teach that in Eden and places like that.
Well, yeah, because their parents are funding them, and so they're creating an elite. Yeah, so in the mainstream, it's virtually unheard of. That's the whole point. you're taught the opposite. You don't have a say, you don't deserve a say. You're not part of the elite. And is it any wonder that when we grow up, we are not fazed by the fact that we don't have a say? When we register to vote, we are registering we are giving up, we are in effect taking a vow of silence. Because when you vote for someone, you're saying they can speak to me because I'm too stupid to speak for myself. Yeah? You become a ward of court and incompetent. That's how the system views us. Yeah? Incompetent, non-enumerate, non-literate, and not able to express ourselves. That's what registering to vote means. That's why when you fill out the ballot paper, all you have to do is put in a tick or a cross, because they assume you're illiterate. Yeah? You never grew up, in their eyes. You're still that 6-7-year-old that never learned to read or write or count or be responsible for themselves or have a say. So there is no democracy. That's just a joke. You can't build a democracy on a system that has schooling that doesn't give pupils a say. What do we not learn at school? We don't learn, as we've hinted at before, key life skills. We don't learn character, because if you're not having a life experience, then how can you develop character? We don't develop character because you can only develop character if you're having experiences. Similarly, you can't develop wisdom. Wisdom comes from experience, not from a book. Common sense, ditto. So all these things that are not accessible from schooling. Moral compass, the difference between right and wrong. You have to go wrong before you can learn how to do it better. Well, if you go wrong on paper, what good is that? That isn't life. You've got to go wrong in life, not on paper. Resilience. Again, if you don't go wrong, you can't deal with having gone wrong, and therefore you're not building resilience. That's why there are so many snowflakes out there. When you go through the average pub or restaurant, you've got all these cocky, confident geezers, guys and gals, but do you know what? They have zero resilience. So the minute a white coat comes in, or a uniformed officer says, right, everyone out, we're in lockdown, they will fucking run like, yeah? If they were sovereigns, they would just say, no, we're having a drink. Fuck off. Yeah? It's not a crime to have a drink. If it is, show us. Yeah? But they've got zero resilience. So they are an accident waiting to happen out there. But if you go in there now, it's all bonhomie and bluster and, you know, yeah, you're all right, Ian, all right. Yeah? But the minute someone with a clipboard comes in, they melt. They're gone. Trust. They're building a zero trust society, zero trust internet. Digital ID is a response to zero trust. There's no trust in the classroom. If you're talking to your classmate, it's because you're cheating, not because you want to build a rapport with your classmate. Yeah? Faith. Where's God? What happened to God? Hello? Where are you? You don't have to do God to see the absence of God. It could be universe, it could be the great creator in the sky, it doesn't matter. But it disappeared, gone. Faith. Faith in self, faith in life, faith in nature. Gone. That's why they're so manipulated, easily manipulated. They've got no faith. No resilience, no faith. So, fuck it, they may as well just believe what the BBC says. So BBC has come to replace God. It is a religion. It's a faith. It's the new faith. That's why they gave us such grief, because we were blaspheming. We weren't giving them truth, we were blaspheming in their eyes. Yeah? We are the heretics. Intelligence. There are 10 forms at least of intelligence. you've got at least 3 brains. Well, 4 if you regard that as 2 parts, 2 brains, left brain, right brain. Left brain, right brain, heart brain, gut brain. At least there's probably a lot more. Every organ they think has got a brain. How many of those brains are being nurtured in the classroom? If you're lucky, 1 small part of your left brain. If you're lucky. So that means your intelligence is being degraded. What else do we not learn at school? Self-awareness, self-expression, self-value, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, purpose and meaning. See, boys and girls before they go to school are natural purpose and meaning makers. By the time they leave school, they're like devoid of all purpose and devoid of all meaning. Unless they've slotted into the career path, and we'll come to career in a minute, and then they've been given their purpose by the state, by the system. But their natural purpose, and this is how they're kept under control. They're offered a glittering career and a job. Now, a career is all very nice and all very glamorous, but what about using the word career as an action word, a verb, to career? What's happening when you're careering? You're losing control. Don't worry about losing control. We'll give you a job. And most jobs are now officially known as bullshit jobs. A bullshit job, this is the LSE, London School of Economics, Professor Graeber has got a book called Bullshit Jobs. A bullshit job which applies to 60% of all jobs, which is defined as the person doing it doesn't know why they're doing it. Doesn't see the purpose or meaning in that job. But people are so grateful to have any job because they've been de-skilled, no wisdom, no moral compass, no skills, no life, no character, no resilience, so that now they need a job, and any bullshit job will do. But it's not school that creates the initial problem. The problem actually predates school. Some people say it's birth, some people say it's even pre-birth, but I'm not going to go down that road. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, I would beg the question, what does taking a boy or girl aged 4 or 5 or 6 to school for the first time represent for that boy or girl? So they've never been to school before, so it's Sunday night and they're having fun. Monday morning, first time ever, they're being taken to a place they've never seen before to be left with people they've never met before for a purpose that they've no idea about. What does it represent to them in one word beginning with A?
Abandonment.
Some people never recover from that. So this is what the system is doing to us. It's leaving us feeling abandoned, and it then normalises it, and we think we've shaken it off, but some of us never shake it off. You could argue that none of us shake it off, but we bury it underneath other experiences. Now, what makes me say that very few of us shake it off? Well, just imagine that 50 years after that boy or girl has been abandoned, they knock on their own parents' door, who are now in their 80s, and say, "Mum, Dad, I've got great news." "What's that?" "Found you a home." Do you see where I'm going with this? Isn't karma a bitch? You get abandoned when you're 5, 6 or 7. You will abandon when you're 50 and they're 80. That's how it works. That's how it works. We're not a very civilized society.
Not in this country.
Not in this country. Not in no. We are well towards the bottom of the heap. Yeah. What key ingredients and primordial needs are missing in the classroom? Let's have a look at what's missing. Well, we know life is, we've discussed that. Unpredictability, and that comes with excitement. That's missing. Yeah? They even walk into class and tell you exactly how every minute is going to go in the next 45 minutes. Where's the unpredictability?
Far along.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Love. Also a key missing ingredient. Love has 5 expressions. It has gifts. You can give things to express your love. Well, what are you being given in the classroom? You can be of service. Well, who's being of service? The teacher's just paying their mortgage. And they're a curriculum delivery agent. They're serving the government. They're not serving you. Words in the classroom are rarely kind, often judgmental, and often cruel. So there's no words of love in the classroom. Time, quality time. We'll come to time in a minute. And touch. You try loving touch in a classroom of 8-year-olds and see how long your career lasts. What other key ingredient and fundamental need is missing in the classroom? Bonding. It's the primordial need. It's on Maslow's hierarchy. Bonding. You can't bond. We've already said it's called cheating. You're trying to relate to a boy or girl in your class. It's cheating. Or it's disruptive. So it's an anti-humanitarian environment. Without bonding, we don't feel that we belong. You've got to have bonding to feel that you belong. We therefore don't feel validated and safe or able to express our true feelings. This is the inner life. No bonding, no inner life. We can then go into emotional distress and self-denial. So if you're not being allowed an inner life, then the best you can do is suppress it. No, it doesn't, I don't have any feelings really. I don't deserve any feelings because remember, children, you give them an inch of self-harm and they'll take it. You give them any negativity and they'll amplify it because they have it must be my fault that I'm being treated like this. Must be, yeah? And this causes them chronic pain or discomfort. Dis-ease. That's what dis-ease is. When they talk about communicable dis-ease, how can you communicate discomfort? Pain avoidance is now the primary driving force. You're in pain. Bullies are in pain. They're in more pain than anyone. They're trying to divert the pain outwards. What other key ingredient and fundamental need is missing? Attention. This is one of my favourite bits, this. Who is the centre of attention in the average classroom? Teacher, of course. What proportion of class time does the average teacher talk or present? Pretty much most of it, 90%. Some teachers 85, some 95, but it's about 90% of. That's why they've got these very detailed lesson plans, because they're the focus of attention, not the kids. The kids are just enabling them to fulfill their obligation to please the management that need to do the audit that shows that they've done certain tasks in a certain amount of time. There's a missing ingredient there. The kids. 90% of class time, centre of attention is the teacher. Therefore, let's do some maths. 30 children, more or less, get 10% of class time to be the centre of attention. So 30 children have got to share 10%. Let's do the maths. That means on average each child gets 12 seconds per class hour of attention. How on earth could you build a life, a sense of value, purpose, meaning, sovereignty, resilience on 12 seconds per hour when most of those 12 seconds will simply be complying, answering a question, or justifying your latest disruption or misdemeanor? Now I think we understand why people go into turmoil when authority turns and looks at them and says, "Oi, what are you doing there? What's your name?" Yeah? Because in that 12 seconds they never learned resilience. Now tell me what you understand by attention deficit. Attention deficit is the lack of attention that the boys and girls are getting compared to the attention that would actually do them good. It's got nothing to do with something that could be given a label and a drug. Yet another scam. It's all a scam. All of it. Without love, bonding, or attention, you get disconnected from self, others, God. If you don't do God, life, universe, prime creator, doesn't matter. You develop low self-worth, because if you're disconnected, you're not feeling any value. You're infantilized, because you have to have connections to learn and grow together. You're apathetic. You've got this low-grade anger that's suppressed and has got nowhere to express itself. So the coping mechanism is you stop caring, as I mentioned before. And you're institutionalized. You only ever see 3 walls and a window, and out of the window all you can see is another wall, which is the 9-foot fencing that stops you from escaping. And you become passive. A passive devourer of insane nonsense called the curriculum, and because they cram it in, if you don't have time to digest it, then you vomit. Yeah, you can't swallow anything when your mouth is already full. You can't take more food in. So the curriculum is just a cramming process, which is why so many people come away with disabilities and phobias, which we'll look at in a minute. Without love, bonding, or attention, you can end up in a chaotic search outside for validation, because you're not getting it inside. You can become codependent. You can develop pain-avoidant addictions. You can develop pain-relieving obsessive compulsions. How many hoarders do you know? I know some people, you knock on their door, it takes them 20 minutes to open the door, because they've got to climb over a pile of newspapers and magazines. And when you're not bonded at a certain young age, your lifespan is reduced. That's the study by Renee Spitz. Lifespan is reduced when the boys or girls have not had bonding, caring attention, as opposed to boys or girls that do feel bonded and that they are looked after by whoever, either a caring teacher or a caring parent. But most teachers haven't got time to be caring, even if they could. What would we call the following outside of school? Threats, punishments, restrictions, homework, character assassination. Well, these are routine treatments of boys and girls by staff. These are routine, nothing to see here really, it's just routine. But outside of the classroom, and particularly in the so-called adult world, a threat would be an assault. That would be a crime. That's a common law crime of assault. Putting someone in fear of consequences is a crime. So let's be clear about that. But so teachers are committing crimes, and some parents, but parents can be excused because they are assaulting their own property. So they have lawful excuse. But teachers are assaulting someone else's property. So they don't have lawful excuse. Punishments, that's breach of the peace, breach of your peace, your inner peace. A punishment is a breach of a boy or girl's peace. That's not a common law crime, but it's a trespass. So it's more of a tort rather than a crime. Breach of duty of care. And if it's done maliciously, then it's called malfeasance in public office. Restrictions, breach of human rights. We'll come to that when we look at the cards. So in other words, freedom of movement, solitaries, restrictions, detentions, that's breach of human rights. Homework is trespass. It's trespass to your family life.
To your time.
To your time. Character assassination, menticide, menticide. Not a crime as such, but it's the killing of the human mind or the killing of the human spirit. That's the purpose of schooling, in a nutshell. If I had to put it in a nutshell, it's the killing of the human spirit. That's the purpose of schooling. Who actually represents children? Who's going to advocate for them? Parents aren't allowed into school, not anymore. Teachers don't give a shit. They're just worried about their careers and their mortgages. And they've got to have children behave because they've got to get the curriculum delivered. Children don't have an advocate. No one's speaking for them. So let's add in a bit of science. NASA experiment. Dr. Beth Jarman, Dr. George Land were commissioned by NASA to see what effect schooling might have on creative genius. So they did a longitudinal study, which means just one group over a period of time, 1,600 boys and girls it was. And they started by testing them in 2005 at the age of 5 and found that at the age of 5, 98% of them qualified as creative genius. So, just started school, you're a genius. They did the same test with the same boys and girls 5 years later. Now they're age 10, they've had 5 years of schooling. Nearly 70% are now brain damaged. That's what losing your creativity is. It's brain damage. There's no other way to put it. Brain atrophy. 70% gone. Another 5 years later, age 15, down to 12%. So barely 1 in 10 leave school with their creative genius intact. Barely 1 in 10. Does it get any better? Does it heck, as they say up north? Because by the time that they are of working age, we're down to 2%. So they did the same study with working age people, and only 2%, 2 in 100, still passed the test of creative genius. So that means at the age of 5, before you enter the schooling system, nearly all boys and girls are creative geniuses. By the time they arrive at the office, nearly all young men and women are duds. They're demics. But the system needs demics. It feeds off demics. It doesn't need creative genius. It ridicules creative genius. It puts it down. It will allow, and I call it celebrity license, it will allow the odd celebrity, and they use the celebrities to entertain the duds. Yeah? The demics, who don't feel worthy of creative genius or celebrity status or whatever, or of excellence. You see what they've done? It's all right, we know we've deactivated you, but now we'll get the 2% to entertain you, like Robbie Williams, or, you know, showing me age. No, I'm not showing me age. There's younger examples, aren't there? You know, we'll get this lot that we've groomed to entertain you. So you'll forget the fact that Robbie Williams can hardly sing. He can hardly put together 2 notes. You know, there's probably about 3 or 4 people in the room who can sing way better than Robbie Williams, and I'm one of them. But he's got all the celebrity. We don't have the celebrity license. That's how they've set it up. Neuroscience, telling a boy or girl off before they're old enough to understand it causes physical brain damage to the hippocampus. So you do not want to be shouting at a boy or girl until they are old enough to shout back or question why you're getting so irate. It doesn't seem to be that important, mummy or daddy or random staff member. What's your problem? So unless they're old enough to respond to your show of random anger, what's your problem? You can't tell them off. You can't shout at them because they suffer brain damage. And that has implications for memory and data retention. I have a theory that it's maybe related to dementia later on in life. So we need to stop shouting and telling our boys and girls off. we're damaging their brains. They also need responsive adults to develop emotionally. Responsiveness, so eye contact, meaningful eye contact, because cold, unresponsive caregivers create dysfunction, more dysfunction in the chemistry of the boy or girl's brain. And in particular, the reward and pleasure hormone, dopamine. There's a dysfunction it creates. They're not getting the pleasure. When they're getting cold, sterile stares, or being told off, or being punished, or humiliated, etc., etc., then they're not feeling the pleasure or the reward, and therefore their hormone system is disrupted. Later on in life, they will therefore need more powerful pleasures to make up for the destroyed hormone system. Can you see where they're going to go? They're going to go towards drugs or towards thrill-seeking, alcohol, crime, whatever, violence. They need the thrill to make up for the lack of the pleasure when they were younger. So the outcome is broken, disaffected, and addicted kids. And generally speaking, conforming to a subhuman norm increases stress levels, so that's cortisol. A little bit of cortisol is okay for you, but it has to come and go. If it's chronic overload of cortisol, then it's one of the huge reasons why people are so sick, because they've got chronic cortisol overload. Stress and fear are known to lower intelligence. Well, we know that schooling only applies or insists that you apply or encourages you to apply one tiny part of half of one brain, as opposed to the main brain, which is there. And these are the two main brains, really, heart and gut. It lowers intelligence, it lowers immunity, because if you're in fear, you're thinking from the mammalian back of the brain, reptilian, no coherent thoughts, so you will comply. You'll not just comply because compliance avoids pain, you'll comply because you can't think through the rules, you can't see the insanity of them. So, fuck it, I'll comply. It lowers immunity on a physical level, but also immunity to bullshit. And empathy. They've done experiments. Children who are naturally empathic can be given empathy lessons, and their empathy can increase if they're given empathy visual guided meditations. Equally, if they're deliberately stressed and made to submit to a divide and conquer, everyone's your rival, no one's your friend, then their empathy goes to zero. Not because they're believing that no one's their friend, it's because they're stressed. So stress lowers empathy, which is why if you look at the masses, they have chronic cortisol levels, high levels, they're stressed, and therefore their empathy levels are also chronically low. And the outcome of all this stress and trauma is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's what the schooling program is designed to instill. PTSD, it's complex because it's subtle and it's incremental. It doesn't have one inciting incident as its source. You don't know where it started, but you know something went wrong, but you can't put your finger on it. And when I asked a waitress in a cafe whether she enjoyed school, she said, yeah, I loved it. And I thought, knowing what I know, I thought, I'm not taking that for a bloody answer. So I said to her, are you absolutely sure? And she gave me a funny look. She went off and she came back 10 minutes later. She said, well, now that you ask me about it, you're right. I absolutely hated school. But when you asked me the question, I gave you the knee-jerk response was thinking about my pals and my mates and my friends, thinking about the friends I made. But she said she actually hated school. So the brain, our brain is kind to us. It doesn't allow us to suffer. When we've got a very dark memory and a light memory, the brain retains, the conscious mind retains, it goes for the lighter one most of the time. In most people, but there are exceptions to that. Some people make a living out of, sticking with the dark bit so they can earn a living out of it, either in therapy or on government payroll. They just stick with the dark memories. The poor me crowd. This PTSD can be aggravated and in fact full-on child abuse if you are an HSP. What's an HSP? Highly sensitive person. Or a liminal. What's a liminal? A liminal is someone that doesn't fit neatly in a box. So if you don't fit into a box, there you go. If you don't fit into a box, then the system can't cope with you. So it will chew you up and spit you out. Yeah, other, yeah. Liminals. Introverts. Introverts. It's an extroverted system. There's no let up. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide for an introvert. You can't sit in a corner of a classroom reading a book by yourself and turning your back on everyone else. You'll just, unless you're being punished. Yeah, so introverts. There's no quiet, sacred space in a classroom or in a school generally, or in most places. Introverts are not a celebrated minority. If you go quiet for any more than a few seconds, the extroverts will say, "What's the matter? What's up with you?" Yeah? But introverts are continually pondering, introspecting, taking their time before they ask a question or respond. Gifted and talented. It's full on, you know, if you're having your gifts and talents ignored or positively stamped out, that's full on child abuse. Another healthy relationship with our own thoughts is the best gateway drug. So all that complex PTSD and all PTSD and self-loathing will ultimately put negative thoughts streaming through your head, and that is, according to the addiction experts, the best gateway drug to heroin, morphine and crack or whatever. The school agenda is to destroy individuality and create groupthink. Dehumanize through conformity and uniformity. And these are not my words. This is from a lecture at Harvard University in 1918. So this agenda has been going for over 100 years. And none of us have spotted it. Separate, divide and conquer. And it was Alexander Ingalls, by the way, spelt I-N-G-L-I-S. Devalue and demoralize. Dumb down and make mute. And deaf and blind, actually. Dumb down, well, the Secretary of State for Ronald Reagan, Charlotte Isabit, did a study and found that the American schooling system was dumbing down Americans, while the British schooling system is doing the same here, doing it brilliantly. What you could study at the age of 12 or 13 in terms of calculus in the 19th century, you have to do at post-grad level now. That's how dumbed down we are. Certainly at degree level. Dumb down and make mute. Well, make mute, you don't have a voice, you don't have a say. Deaf and blind, well, blind, there's nothing to see in the classroom. Deaf, that's part of the apathy, you don't want to know. And the schooling system created, and we exported it to China, a social credit system. And we all make a big deal of the Chinese. All they've done is digitize it. But it was our system that they imported. It was the schooling model. We imported the Prussian schooling model, which is a military model from the 19th century. We created it, we turned it into a social credit system. So girl or boy, well behaved, up they go, up the rankings, tick, 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 high score. Good boy or girl, badly behaved, down they go. Boy or girl, very, very, very badly behaved, out they go. If that isn't a social credit system, then I'm missing something. Then I don't know what is. That's what it is. So we don't need to worry about social credit system. We've had it for 150 years. And then it evolved, it morphed into the professional social credit system, where you need a reference from your last employer. And if you don't get a good reference, then you're unemployable.
It's slavery. That's what it is.
And then they added on the finance credit reference. So you've got professional credit reference, financial credit reference, school, implanted, self-credit reference. It was more debit than credit, to be honest. This is Mencken, who was an author and writer in the 1930s, 40s, I think. The aim of public education is not to spread enlightenment at all, it's simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed a standard citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. Now you can see they have long-term plans. They could see we need generation after generation of degraded humans so that one day when we really go for them, big time, there'll be minimal resistance. State schooling is a process of subhumanization. So let's have some equations. Human plus schooling, as I've already hinted, equals subhuman. Go to school, find a job, pay off debt, climb the ladder, vacation for 2 weeks, pay off mortgage, die. That's the life of a subhuman. Human minus schooling, so human doesn't go to school, equals superhuman. And they know that, that's why they created the schooling system. See how it works? All your natural gifts and talents will flourish because you've got the time and the space. Subhuman plus AI equals, now I think you should probably work this out now.
Transhuman.
Thank you. That's how they get transhumans. They can't get a transhuman from a superhuman because they're offering you artificial superhumanity. But if you're already superhuman, you don't need the artificial version. But if you are subhuman, so you've got no obvious gifts, no obvious talents, no obvious resilience, no obvious anything, you'll take the blue pill. You'll go for the artificially enhanced lifespan. Learn Chinese in 2 seconds, just put the Chinese pod inside or whatever it is. You know, learn to dance like Fred Astaire in 2 seconds, just put, you know, the moves in the brain. School myth 1, we go to school to be socialized. No, you don't. You go to school to be anti-socialized, to be atomized, to learn that your friends who you thought were your friends are actually your rivals, and they can get you into trouble, they can snitch on you. Talk to them at the wrong time, say the wrong thing, you're disruptive or you are cheating. School myth number 2, it's the best days of your life. For many, it's the worst. And for those who have a neutral opinion about it, what I would suggest, that the evidence shows that they adapted to it. Because we're so adaptable that if you don't think that it was the worst time of your life, it's because you are very, very adaptable. And if you're very, very adaptable, then you're going to just float through. There'll be nothing positive happening, but nothing negative either, because you adapted. It's a bit like the boiled frog syndrome, isn't it? Do you know about the boiled frog? Put the frog in boiling water, it jumps out, but put it in cold water and gradually heat the water. The school reality, it's a form of imprisonment, and I call it collective solitary confinement. That's what it is. It's a prison, and you are doing, they can put you in individual confinement, but if you're in the class with everybody else, then it's collective solitary. Solitary means that you're not allowed to express yourself, you're not bonding, you're not engaging, there's nothing happening, there's no real experience, so it's solitary. You're all alone inside yourself. You're confined, and since it's happening to everyone, it's collective. Home education, very quickly. You can expect loving and relaxed environments, attention, bonding and connection, passion and enthusiasm, spontaneity, fun and laughter, hunger for learning, learning through sovereign choice, learning from living life. And it's only going to get easier because we've got a critical mass now of 500,000 boys and girls that kept at home. 30 million in America. and it's doubled in the last 12 months, I think. It was 300,000 during COVID, now it's 500,000, might be even be 600,000. Going on anecdotal evidence. If we can get to 1 million, we're done. They can make homeschooling illegal and it's not going to faze anyone. Because there's a lot of home educators who don't understand any of what I've said. They can get the fact that schooling isn't right, but they're not free thinkers. They're actually narcissists that are going for the easy way out. Home education myths, there's no socialisation, beg to differ. What studies they've done, and remember the mainstream won't commission studies because they know what they're going to find out. They're home educated boys and girls, on the whole, way more socialised, more confident, eloquent, expressive, fun, calm, relaxed, gifted, talented. They're not being suppressed or oppressed. So it's just a win-win-win. No motivation, that's a myth. When you've got freedom, you're motivated. No boy or girl wants to just sit and, unless they're living in a narcissistic cesspool. But once you give them the freedom, you watch them go. Woof. No progress without formal structure. No, there's no progress with formal structure. No access to higher education. Not that we would want higher education because we're awakened to the problem now. But if they did want it, they can get it easily. The universities bite your hand off if you've been home educated because they know that you are way superior on all levels to their schooled kids. The schooling reality is that it traumatizes over 90% of pupils. It's a 10+ year prison sentence, and it is a cornerstone of the Fourth Reich. You can't have a global fascism without a global totalitarian schooling system. You just can't have it. It's not going to happen. You've got to have the schooling system in place before the adults who have been through that system will roll over and accept the Fourth Reich, because they will think it's heaven on earth, that their interests are being looked after, and the Stockholm syndrome will just go rampant within their narcissistic belief system. These children are being taught a right old lesson. Remember, for every hour spent teaching a boy or girl, they lose 1 hour of potential fun, spontaneity, and true self-directed learning. So get your narcissistic hubris out of the way. You are not their teacher. I've been in the company of thousands of kids. I've taught them nothing. I don't aim to teach them anything. I get out of their way. Get out of their way. You're only going to infect them with your limitations. Leave them alone. Pink Floyd were right. Leave them kids alone. Leave them alone. With one exception, if they come asking you questions, answer the questions. And if you can't answer the questions, tell them that you can't answer the question, and they'll go elsewhere. But don't tell them, don't volunteer anything. Otherwise, you're just indoctrinating them. They might as well be back in school. What if keeping a boy or girl at home would not work right now? So that's the instant remedy, isn't it? Pull them out. So the situation is that and even the boy or girl knows that they shouldn't be in school, but the situation, for some reason, it's not right. It's not immediately right to take them out because the boy or girl would miss their friends, or you would not be able to be at home. They're too young, and you're a single parent, or you're married, or you're partnered with someone who has got Stockholm syndrome and regards it as a dereliction of duty to take them out. So we have a transitional remedy where we take the remedy into the classroom. So if they're met with unreasonable demands, threats or punishments, then teach them, and it says it on the card, to ask politely if the staff member is giving them an order or a request. If it's a request, then teach them the art of polite self-assertion. Thank you very much, miss. Thank you very much, sir. But I'm declining that request today. doesn't feel right for me to say yes right now. But if the staff member gets belligerent, then teach them that an order, which is an order in commerce, so if they say, no, this is an order, well, the school is a place of business. Children are units, they're referred to as the product, so you're dealing with them on a commercial basis. So to fulfill an order, you deliver an invoice. This is how we work in commerce. So your mum and dad will have put together, or the mum and dad or caregiver will have put together a family invoice. Give this to the teacher if they say they're giving you an order. So for homework, we charge £100 an hour. For detentions, it's £500 a minute. And this is perfectly legitimate. Absolutely legitimate. Now, obviously, you're dealing with narcissists, and they're going to escalate. And you're going to find the boy or girl will find themselves in front of the judge, which is the head teacher in this case. So we need to escalate our own remedies. So let's see how it goes on. Or if you want to de-escalate momentarily, you could say, let's say you don't fancy the invoice strategy because maybe the boy or girl is too young, or maybe you haven't written it out yet, or maybe the mum and dad haven't a clue what they're doing. So let's go sideways and go for an easier strategy and ask them whether being given a choice. Excuse me, sir, excuse me, miss, are you giving me a choice? If the answer is yes, then we're going back to the politely decline. If the answer is no, well, there you go. If the answer is yes, teach them how to choose wisely, self-responsibly and self-respectfully. If the answer is no, then quote Section 3, subsection 5, Modern Slavery Act 2015, criminal exploitation. So if you're not being given a choice, that's child trafficking. How can you be in an environment where you're not being given a choice? That's trafficking. That's modern slavery. What is criminal exploitation? It's inducing someone to provide a service using threats or force. What's the service? Extra work, homework, detention. It's compliance with orders. That's the service. Giving of your time and energy. Yeah? Now, if that creates yet another escalation, then you've got the United Nations Convention up your sleeve. If they escalate the humiliation and the penalisation, then they're really heading into trouble. Because you've got the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, 1989, quote, Article 28, discipline in schools should respect human dignity. Every government is a signatory to that convention. Every school is an agent, therefore employed by the government, therefore owes a duty to comply with that convention and is therefore in breach of international law if, as a result of your boy or girl standing up for themselves, it escalates into humiliation or punishment, then the school make a record, take a recording, write it down. School is in breach of international law. How many schools would want to be publicised as being in breach of international law? We're just using the system against abuse of the system within the system. That's all. This is not revolution, this is evolution. There's nothing, if you think that this is revolutionary, you haven't been paying attention for the last 3 years. This is evolution. This is boys and girls rising in stature using the standard tools available to all of us, but using them within the classroom. That's evolutionary. The 4 freedoms: time, location, thought, expression. So you need to do when you're assessing whether or not to pull the boy or girl out of school, do a time check, location check, freedom. Can they be where they want when they want to be there? Are they allowed to think their own thoughts? Are they allowed to express themselves? Do that check for yourself at work. If you fail the freedom test, get the fuck out of there. If you would like to go deeper in education, then you've got the book. Someone's already bought the book, £20 here. Or if you don't have cash, you can buy it from the website, and I'll send it to you in the post. the only education at the end of the day is self-education. That's Asimov. If you'd like to go deeper generally, which is law, health and education, those are my 3 specialisms, then you've got the website, and you've got it now on the card. And you'll find Know Your Rights from 2020, Disclosure 2021, Disclosure 2022. You won't find this yet, although Sam's going to do a version of this talk, so you'll be able to see that. Then we'll do a full length later in the year.